Hello, I'm Redshirt Down, and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be taking a look at the white creature and non-creature spells that we found in the bulk box. If my audio sounds a little weird today, it's because I accidentally recorded this entire video without recording the audio, so bear with me. That said, let's dig into the cards. Azorius Arrestor. Its stats are just okay, but the Detain ETB might make this card worth it. Porcelain Legionnaire. Here's a nice aggressive threat. At virtually 2 mana for a 3/1 first striking soldier. And it looks like we have our first rare mixed in, Tivadar of Thorn. Pretty good stat line, with a lot of incidental hate on red. Not sure that we can keep that kind of color hate in long term, but we'll give it a shot for now. Looks like we got 2. Okay. Set one aside. Blade Blizzard Kitsune. I don't see us building ninjas, but a 3 mana 2/2 double strike isn't bad. Vizier of Deferment is a nice White Mane Lion style card that can help rebuy an ETB. Squad Captain's not great, but it might be what we have to finish off the top end. Sarah Angel, the classic bomb. This might be the right environment for her to shine again. And Angel of the Dawn. Pretty cool way to pump the team for 1 alpha strike. Mesa Enchantress. This might be a player if we end up with a lot of auras. Could be cool. That Grateful Apparition I just threw into the keep pile is because Proliferate is a pretty cool mechanic to build around. Lauren, Disciple of History. Might be cool to have this kind of recursion in the cube as well. Panic Bystander. This might be an integral part if we end up building that life gain deck. It's an enabler and a payoff in one. Griffwing Cavalry is a decent body, but it's its own enabler for training. Drogskull Infantry is an okay body, but the fact it comes with 2 cards in one means for now it's a maybe, and Resistance Squad is gonna go in as a human typo enabler. Next up, we have Vacation Javelineers. It's a classic card that'll end up playing well with Proliferate if we end up doing that in the cube. Aviary Mechanic is a nice 2-drop that also lets you rebuy your ETBs that are relevant. Forerunner of the Legion. That's a cool find. I doubt we're going to have the vampires for it, but it gives us something to aspire to build. Venerable Knight is not only your aggressively statted 1-drop that you're looking for, but it's also got the upside of potentially giving a counter to one of your knights. Favorite of Iroas is one of those cards that you want to build around if you're doing enchantments. Same with this Archon of Falling Stars and this Captivating Unicorn, plus this Heliod's Pilgrim peeking out from the back. This might be a theme that we want to start building towards. Arcbound Mouser is one of those glue cards that I just love. It's an artifact, it's got counter synergies, and it's got lifelink if we end up doing that as well. Nothing really interesting comes up for quite a while, so let's talk about what I'm pulling and why. A lot of the cards that I'm pulling to the cube are either really good stats, or they have some kind of a synergy with cards I've already pulled and maybe even highlight. This will give me a good base of cards that I can then whittle down in CubeCobra. East Farthing Farmer is a card that does well with token and artifact synergies, so we'll add that in for now. And Westfold Rider is your disenchant that you absolutely want to see on a body in white or green. Faramir is a really interesting card, and I really wish it didn't have the ring tempts you mechanic, but if you're willing to play with that, this is definitely something you'd want to put into your cube. Rosy Cotton of South Lane is great. Its stats are bad, but it supports +1/+1 counters and tokens. Plus, the showcase frame is a nice touch. Palace Sentinels. This card right here is probably too strong, but we'll put it in for now, and we'll play with the list as we build it. Famished Paladin. Great stats, it's a life gain payoff, and it's a vampire and a knight to boot. This'll probably make it into the list. Devoted Cropmate is a decent body, but it has the ability to recur your small threats. Great for an aggressive Boros or even White Weenie Shell. And this Serene Steward is another life gain payoff. This might actually become a real deck in this environment. This Guardian of Agraza would normally be a very easy cut. However, I did notice while sorting out the other creatures that some of Dominaria United's Defenders Matter theme showed up. So maybe we'll try it out, but I don't have high hopes for this card. Something I caught while editing this segment was that I opened an Arcbound Javelineer. It's going to be a strictly better Ication Javelineer. And there you have it, the white creatures from the cube. We're going to have to enter this into CubeCobra in order to get our list more refined. Welcome to our non-creature segment, where we're going to start with artifacts and enchantments. What we're looking for are things that make tokens, or things that remove permanents, plus anything else that's kind of a synergy piece with the creatures we've already picked out. Ancestral Blade. This is a card that I love for Cube. It makes a 2/2 body when it comes into play, and then only equips for 1 after that token's been killed. I think it pulls its weight as a Leonin Scimitar or Short Sword variant card. Basilica Skullbomb. At this point, I'm remembering that I might have artifact or enchantment recursion, so just getting the value off of it might be worth it. And Cogworker's Puzzle Knot is going to be added for that very same reason, although I do like the Puzzle Knot a lot more. Okay, let's get into our enchantments. Skyblade's Boon is a worse Griff's Boon, but it's a good way to keep giving things evasion. Pacifism is a classic removal card in white, probably going to run it. Abiding Grace is one of my pet cards. I love recurring those little 1-drops that sacrifice themselves for a greater good. Not only that, but the 1 health every turn might be relevant in this environment. Not only is Touch the Spirit Realm a pretty good banishing light, but it also has the channel ability to flicker something. This is probably going to make the cube no matter what else I cut. Omen of the Sun is a pretty good token maker that will definitely benefit from any enchantment recursion we add, and it's nice to find a Sentinel's Eyes, which can come out of the graveyard as often as you can pay for it. Okay, now let's get started with the instance. We're looking for any kind of removal, token creating, or anything that can buff a single creature or a team. The more modal the card can be, the better. There's nothing really noteworthy coming out of this stack of cards. Just good removal, good tokens, and good buffs that all are pretty low on the mana curve. Now we're getting into the sorceries, and just like the instance, we're looking for good removal and creature makers, and hopefully a Wrath or 2. What a shame. Now for Wrath, Now for Ruin would fit great into this environment, except again it has that ring tempts you mechanic that I'm trying to avoid. That's a shame. This card could have played really fun. That's it from the white cards from this bulk buy. Almost everything we build from the cube is gonna have already been picked through, but I may have to return to the box to find a card or 2 after we have a better idea what the archetypes are going to look like. I'll see you in the next segment where we explore these cards on CubeCobra. Welcome back. Now that I've put the cards into the list, we're going to have a better idea of how the cube is going to look. We're starting with 144 white cards, and I don't plan on us getting down to its final number, but we should be able to cull at least 40 or so in this episode. What we're really looking for is to get rid of those vanilla or French vanilla creatures I might have thrown in just to have the spots along the curve, and also any archetypes that we see not working out. One more spot we're looking to cull from is redundancy. We may have too many copies of a very similar effect than we actually want to run in the finished list. Let's get into it. Arcbound Mouser. Life-linking artifact creature that already comes with +1/+1 counter synergies. It's staying for now. Battlefield Raptor. 2 very good keywords on a 1-drop means it's probably going to make the list. Beloved Princess is a life-linking 1/1 that also has human synergies. Basically, it's a better version of Train Caracal, so let's take that one out and leave the princess in for now. Up next, we have Cheeky House Mouse, which is a Savannah Lions with upside, and also Fairy Guide Mother, which is a flying man with upside. I love having these adventure creatures in the cube. At time of recording, Icacian Javelineers has been replaced by Arcbound Javelineers because of better synergies. But even at the time, I knew I wanted an effect like this in white to better protect itself. Leonin Vanguard is an okay body by itself, but it also helps trigger those life gain synergies that we may want. Let's keep it in the cube at this moment. Pious Wayfarer is an okay body, but it's one of the signals that we may want to be using enchantments as a theme. Let's keep it in and see what else we can find. Tragic Poet, another card that is interested in an enchantment theme, and this one helps get back enchantments from the graveyard. These two probably don't go in the same deck, but it's good to have the signals if we're going to build it. Venerable Knight is another Savannah Lions with upside, plus that line about +1/+1 counters on knights may not just be flavor text, because I did notice a bit of them while I was sorting out the rest of the white creatures. Okay, now we're off to the 2-drops. Eniok Bondkin has decent stats, plus it has +1/+1 counter synergies. Arcbound Prototype, again, they're middling stats, but it's an artifact, and it has that modular, so those counters do matter. Aviary Mechanic is a terrible white main lion, because it doesn't work at flash speed. It also isn't nearly as good as Core Skyfisher, which at least gets the bonus of flying and an extra point of toughness. Since it's the worst of the 3 options and we only want a certain amount of redundancy for this effect, it's going to end up cut. Next up is Azorius Arrestor. It's got an okay body, but I really want it for that ETB value. Let's keep it in for now. After that is Daxos, Blessed by the Sun. It's a nice enchantment creature that at the very least is going to be a 2/2. Plus, it's a life gain enabler, and we definitely going to need enablers and payoffs if that's going to be a deck. Next up is Drogskull Infantry. It's a bad card on either side, but sometimes just having the ability to have 2 cards in one makes it worth it. After that is Expedition Healer, which is an okay body with at least 1 relevant keyword, not to mention the fact that clerics seem to be abundant in this color, so we'll keep it. Fairgrounds Patrol is another one of those 2 cards in one that help give you value from beyond the grave. At least for now, it's in. Famished Paladin is the first of our life gain payoffs. It's a very big body for 2 mana, and not only that, but it's both a vampire and a knight. This may make the cut to the final cube. Fencing Ace is a human that carries equipment and auras very well. You're in, buddy. It's not hard to imagine that this Flutterfox will always have flying for its caster. Let's keep it in the cube at this point. Geist of the Lonely Vigil has Defender, which would normally make it a non-starter for me. But not only does it have the ability to turn itself on and become an attacker, but it also is a cleric for the cards that care about clerics, and it's a defender if we end up having to build a defender deck. This might not make it long term, but at least for now I'll keep it in. Grateful Apparition is the type of card that I'm always grateful for. It doesn't look like much, but being able to proliferate every turn can certainly gain you an advantage. Hero of the Pride is great with any combat tricks or any auras. I don't know that either will be deep enough to help support it long term, but at least for now we could keep it in the cube. Knight of Grace is both the fixed version of and the callback to White Knight, both of which are currently in the list. I only want one of this effect, and because White Knight hoses black just so much more than Knight of Grace does, we're going to keep the Knight of Grace for the cube. Goodbye, White Knight. Core Blade Master is basically a strictly better fencing ace. I didn't catch that until I was doing this edit, so the list is going to be wrong for the rest of this episode, but at this point I have pulled out the fencing ace just to have the one effect in the Core Blade Master. Seeker of the Way is a great find for this environment. Not only is it a good card by itself, and plus has that warrior and human types, but it's also great for a Spellslinger deck, which normally isn't in white, but can be adjacent to it. Serene Steward is both a human and a cleric. That's a life gain payoff with +1/+1 counters. There's almost no way this doesn't make the final list. Shepherd of the Flock is the first aggressively statted 2-drop we've seen so far in white, plus it has that rescue spell attached to it as well. Probably going to want to run this. Silver Flame Squire, on the other hand, is just a bad body with a bad spell. I have no problem cutting this from the environment. Transcendent Envoy. When I originally added this to the card list, I imagined that it was doing this to all enchantments, but seeing as how it's only applicable to auras, I think we have to cut it. Goodbye, Transcendent Envoy. Unassuming Sage is a pretty cool way to get an extra enchantment at the cost of no cards. However, it's only a one-time cost, and it costs an extra 2 to get the bonus. I don't think that this card can make it in this environment. Goodbye, Unassuming Sage. Westfold Rider is exactly the type of card we're looking for. It's a disenchant on a body with some really good stats, and it's a human and a knight. Green and white love disenchant on body effects, so you're staying in the cube. Youthful Knight was a card I had only added to make sure that we had enough bodies at 2 in white. We do, so we don't need it. Okay, let's get into the 3-drops, starting with Ardenvale Tactician. It's an okay body for 3 mana, also a human and a knight, but it also has an instant, which is a pretty decent combat trick. I think we're going to keep this in the cube for now. Next up, we have Argivian Cavalier. It's an Orc Knight that makes a body on ETB. It's nice getting the power toughness split over those 2 bodies. Let's keep this for now as well. Auramancer gives us another way to recur our enchantments, so that's going to stay in for now as well. Plus, look at that art. As it turns out, we did not end up with enough ninjas to make a Blade Blizzard Kitsune work. Not only that, but I really don't like that its ninjutsu is more expensive than it is as a creature to cast. This card's not going to make it. Goodbye, Blade Blizzard Kitsune. Celestial Unicorn is a life gain payoff, but its stats are really bad by itself. Yes for now, but I could see it being cut. Devoted Cropmate is a cool human warrior that gets things back from the graveyard. Even though it's got the same stats as the unicorn, it's got something that matters, so we'll keep it for now. East Farthing Farmer is not a great card, but it does make an artifact token, so if we end up doing that with this cube, it'll be an integral part. Favorite of Eoris? It's kind of a worse Blade Blizzard Kitsune because it doesn't even have double strike naturally. Goodbye, favored. Forerunner of the Legion has a really unique ability. I'd love for this cube to be the place where it can shine, so hopefully red and black give us something good. Guardians of Agraza. As I've already stated, this card would normally be a non-starter for any cube environment. But that said, I did notice both the blue and the black walls from Dominaria United are in the set, so we'll give it a shot, and we'll see if we can pull together a Defenders deck. That could be fun. Kemba, Ka Regent. It's a great card that supports the equipment archetype by creating tokens that can wear that equipment every upkeep that any equipment is attached. Knighted Mirror. This is a card that also gets conditional double strike, but it's an artifact creature and a knight, and it shouldn't be too hard to put counters on this to begin with. This might become one of the best snowbally threats in white. Mardu Horde Chief. This has better typing than its next in kin, the Argivian Cavalier, but unfortunately it needs you to attack in order to get the token into play. Right now we'll keep them both in, but we'll see which one we'd rather prefer as we get a more solid idea of what this cube is looking to do. Mesa Enchantress. I kind of like the idea of this being an engine card for the cube, but its stats are just so pithy, and it doesn't do enough at 3. Goodbye, Mesa Enchantress. Porcelain Legionnaire. This card is not a 3-drop. It's a 2-drop. I'm going to show you how to make that change. See, if you look at its mana cost, it's 2 and a Phyrexian, so you should be paying 2 and 2 life to cast this spell. So I'm going to get in there and I'm going to change it. And then you see it has pending edit. And then you just close this window. And I'll show you that in the edit bay, where it's showing all of the cards we're removing, it's got a little tooltip saying you've changed information on Porcelain Legionnaire. As a 2-drop, it's pretty strong. Resistance Squad. It's got okay stats, but this is one of your humans' payoff, and a lot of creatures just happen to be humans. Rosy Cotton of South Lane. As I explained when we were opening the cards, I like that it's in the showcase, it makes a food token, and it does artifact things. This is one of those cards that touches so many different archetypes, it's going to stay in the cube. Savior of the Sleeping. It's an okay stat line for a human knight, and it wants your enchantments to go into the graveyard. Unfortunately, I don't think we have enough in white to give it a spot. 10th District Veteran. It's a nice vigilant creature that gives something else vigilance as well. Unfortunately, its stat line is just too low. Tivadar of Thorn. This is that legend that we opened that was all mixed in with the rest of the cards. I am not a huge fan of how much it hoses red, especially if red has a lot of goblins. I'm going to leave it in for now because it does have a lot of keywords, but I wouldn't be surprised if I cut this just for fun reasons before the end of this cube adventure. Vizier of Deferment. This is a cool card that helps you buy back some of those ETBs. It's got that flash, and you can use it on an attacker or a blocker. Now we're on to 4s, 5s, and more. Starting with Empyrean Tactician. You don't do enough. Goodbye. These cards need to really make a splash because we're only going to have a few of them. Next up, Abyssinian Missionaries. Could be a pretty cool equipment payoff, but again, it's a 4-mana 3/3 Azorius Justiciar. This is an expensive version of the 2-drop. Sure, it does detain 2, but it doesn't do enough. Goodbye to you. Besotted Knight. I wouldn't be happy casting either side of this card. Goodbye. Griffwing Cavalry. It's a pretty cool creature. It's got a small body to start, but it is a human knight. But it also enables itself with its training ability. Not to mention the fact it can throw something, so hopefully whatever it's training can give it a boost. Lauren, Disciple of History. This is a pretty cool way to recur your artifacts, especially if we end up with a lot of legendary creatures. I don't know if this is the cube for it, but I guess at this point we could give it a shot. Palace Sentinels. As stated before, this card is very, very powerful. It could even make the list of like powered cubes. Monarch is such a strong mechanic in 1v1 that I don't think we can keep it in the list. But for now, it'll stay. Phantom General. It's a creature token anthem, and that's the reason I pulled it out, because I remember playing it in Return to Ravnica. But I don't think we're going to have the same amount of token generation as you had in that set. I think this needs to be cut. Goodbye. Rhyme for a Reindeer. It's a 4-mana 3/4 that only taps a creature down. No. Goodbye. Scrapwork Cohort is a 3/1 plus a 1/1. I still don't think that's enough stats for that mana value. Goodbye. Skyhunter Patrol. This is a 4 mana 2/3 flying first strike. Basically the same as the Battlefield Raptor that costs 3 mana less. The Battlefield Raptor is much better at carrying equipment just for that reason, so goodbye Skyhunter Patrol. Timely Horde Mate. This is another version of that small creature recursion. Sure, you had to have attacked, but considering this is probably the top end in a white weenies build, we'll keep it. Angel of the Dawn. This is a nice Anthem Angel. It'll come into play, and even though its stats aren't terrific, it can give you a surprise alpha attack without worry about a crackback. Angelic Quartermaster, another 5 mana angel. That's a 3/3 in stats. Probably only going to keep one of these, and I think I'd rather keep the Angel of the Dawn because of that Team Anthem ability. Goodbye, Angelic Quartermaster. Belfry Spirit. This is just too small. Goodbye. Disciple of the Sun. Hey look, it's a baby Sun Titan, only not nearly as good. Unfortunately, just doesn't do enough. Goodbye, Disciple of the Sun. Lonesome Unicorn. Another adventure card that I don't want to be casting either side of. Goodbye, Lonesome Unicorn. Master Scald. This is a pretty cool way to recur artifacts or enchantments. But that said, it is a 5 mana 4/4. I'm not sure if it's going to make the cut long term, but at least for now we'll keep it. Sensor Splicer. I like its baby brother, the Blade Splicer, but unfortunately we didn't open any of them. At 5 mana, getting that 3/3 golem body is just too little. Goodbye, Sensor Splicer. Sarah Angel, the original bomb. This environment is probably kind to it, and I could see this being one of our 2 5-drops. Squad Captain. This is kind of like the inverse Angelic Quartermaster. It gets bigger for how many creatures you have instead of buffing your team. I don't know that it's going to make the cut long term, but we'll keep it in here for now. Archon of Falling Stars. This is another way to return enchantments, but I think at this point we don't want either of these 6-drops. Eagles of the North is a very good card in more powered environments because you have dual lands that are typed. I don't expect a single dual land in this environment to be typed, so there's no reason to run Eagles of the North. Goodbye, Eagles of the North. Goodbye, Archon of Falling Stars. And lastly, Soul of Migration. It might just be that I have a soft spot for this guy, but I like having a 4 mana create 2 birds, put a big guy in the graveyard, especially when we have at least one form of reanimation in Late to Dinner. You can evoke it and then flicker it, but at least for now, this can be the big finisher that you reanimate. Okay, now let's move on to the non-creature spells. There's not going to be much interesting in the instant or sorcery section, so I imagine that we're just going to skip through and kind of highlight the cool cards and why we're using them. If you're interested, you can see the full list of what was in and what came out on the CubeCobra History tab. Resolute Strike and Strength of Arms are basically the same card. They both give a one-time buff that also has an effect if you have an equipment. I think of the two, for now, I would rather run Strength of Arms, because it's always active as long as you own an equipment. But I can imagine if we have enough warriors in our list, that I might come back and put in Resolute Strike instead. Contraband Livestock is an interesting removal card that could be fun if we have more dice rolling in the cube. Disenchant. This Richard Kane Ferguson art is too good to be on a card that's this bad. We're going to remove it. Revelation of Power is an interesting card. I believe we probably have enough counter synergy to make this always active, but it's a little expensive for my combat tricks. We're going to remove it. Revitalize is not a great card, but considering that we may have life gain as a theme, plus it's just a cantrip, we'll keep it in for now. I hate that we have to run this frame, but this card is too good to pass up. Borrowed Grace is the first of our Trumpet Blast effects, and we're going to want at least a couple of these to help keep our opponents honest. Break Ties is just a really bad removal spell. It's very modal, but I think it's too expensive at 3 mana to justify its inclusion. Moment of Valor. I think we'll keep it for now, but we'll see. It's on the bubble. Warhorn Blast is another Trumpet Blast, but it just costs so much mana. 5 is too much for this effect. Gird for Battle. I would like this card a lot more if it was an instant. Lay Down Arms. This is probably the best removal spell we have in white. Lucky Offering. It's not terrible. Helps with the life gain and destroys an artifact. Prismatic Ending. Another excellent white removal spell I didn't expect to find. Kythian's Tactics. Another Trumpet Blast, but this time at sorcery speed. However, it also gives your creatures vigilance. Survival Cache. This might be a cube where this actually can work. Sworn Companions. It's a worse Raise the Alarm, but that said, it's not bad. Captain's Call is basically the same, but instead of getting 2 2/2s, we get 3 1/1s, so we'll remove it. Late to Dinner. This is our 1 white reanimation spell, plus it comes with an artifact token. Now let's get started with the artifacts and enchantments. I'm really only going to point out those that do something interesting, because for the most part, we're still looking for removal, token makers, or buff spells. Let's begin with Basilica Skull Bomb. I really wish this was a spell bomb instead. I don't think it does enough for its spell side. Goodbye. Ancestral Blade. This is the quintessential short-sword variant that I want. It makes a body, and it's cheap to equip. Cogworker's Puzzle Knot. This is the kind of artifact we're looking for. It makes a body, you can sacrifice it to make a body, and you can potentially bring it back with other cards. Military Discipline. It's a cute combat trick, but I don't think it does enough. Goodbye. Sentinel's Eyes. This is the kind of aura we're looking for. You can cast it from the graveyard again and again to continually buff your team at the cost of 1 mana. Soul Snare. This is the perfect removal spell for this environment. It's got a threat of activation, and it also can be recurred by some of the cards. Pacifism. A very classic removal card. Skyblade's Boon. Another aura that can come back from the graveyard. Being able to give it evasion out of the graveyard sounds like a winning plan. Abiding Grace. I've already mentioned that this is one of my pet cards. I love being able to recur small threats or little self-sacrifice fodder. That said, even the life gain part of this card is useful because we are going to have life gain triggers that'll fire. This card is a definite windmill slam into this environment. Omen of the Sun is a very interesting card because functionally it's very close to Sworn Companions. Both will make 2 tokens for 3 mana, but this does it at instant speed. This gains the light right away, and the other ones gain the life when you attack or defend with them. They both fill a very similar role, but because enchantments are looking like a theme that is coming together in white, we're going to keep Omen of the Sun and get rid of Sworn Companions. Goodbye, Sworn Companions. Touch the Spirit Realm is a very good Banishing Light variant. Having the ability to flicker something to rebuy its ETB is a nice way that this card is modular. Knightly Valor. This aura gives you a body, but it also costs way too much for this environment. Goodbye, Knightly Valor. Momentary Blink. This is one of those cards that helps define an archetype. It's in. Juniper Order Rootweaver. It rewards you for building into green, plus it gives you counters. I think at this point we'll keep this in the cube as well. Panicked Bystander. It's a life gain payoff, and it's a human, and it's also a life gain enabler. It's going to be staying in as well. Heroic Charge. One more Trumpet Blast, this time for 4 mana. I like that it has this red kicker, but I think it just costs too much. We're going to remove it from the cube. Okay, so we have now removed 50 cards out of that 144, leaving us with 95 white cards left. We're probably going to end up cutting about another 30 or so before this series is over. We would like to know what the other colors are adding to the table. You can check out the cube list down below to see where the cube is right now. I'm warning you though, it may have spoilers for an upcoming episode. Next time, we're going to check in on Blue and see what cards they're bringing to the table. Thank you, and goodbye.